FPL Game Week 24 transfer targets. Today, we got something a little bit different. We're going to do a double Game Week 25 special where we spend most of the time talking about the 4 teams with a double game week in Game Week 25, who the players are you should be considering and whether you should be buying them this week as well. We'll cover a few extra assets looking at Game Weeks 25 and onwards, talking about some of the blank and double game weeks as well in today's Game Week 24 transfer targets. What is up, everyone? Welcome back to another video. FPL Harry here. Before we dive in, 1,000 likes on the video is the aim. Subscribe if you are new around here as well. Game Week 24, who are the key players that you need to be buying now? We're going to be focusing on 4 teams really in this video, and those are the 4 teams with a double game week in Game Week 25. So for those of you wondering, for those of you not 100% sure, those of you who already know what's going on, there are 6 teams with a differing schedule over the next 3 game weeks. So whether that's a blank, whether that's a double, whether that's a blank and a double, there are 6 teams and they are broken out into groups of 2. Liverpool and Luton, they both have a double game week in Game Week 25, but blank in Game Week 26. Chelsea and Spurs both just blank in Game Week 26, so they have one less fixture than every other team. And then Manchester City and Brentford have a double game week in Game Week 25 and a normal game week in Game Week 26, so they have an extra fixture on top of every team in the league apart from those 2. So today we're mainly going to be focusing around the top 4 teams, those with a double in Game Week 25. The reason this is important is it might depend on how many assets from some of the teams with a blank in Game Week 26 that you're able to buy. So for example, if you own Richarlison, you own Pedro Porro, if you own Cole Palmer, if you own Malagusto, Colwill, Sterling, and you have lots of players blanking in Game Week 26, then the chances of how many players you're able to add from the likes of Liverpool and Luton, if you already own Trent, maybe you have Darwin, Jota, that needs to be considered. Because although you might put out lots of double game week players in Game Week 25, if it means you can only put out 7 or 8 players in Game Week 26, then you need to consider that as part of your strategy. Now, some of you might be considering playing your free hit in Game Week 25 or Game Week 26, depending on if you don't have many double game week players, then you could play it in Game Week 25. If you have lots of players from the likes of Liverpool, Luton, Chelsea, Spurs, you could play your free hit in Game Week 26. However, I personally would recommend holding your free hit until later on in the season. There will be other opportunities to use it, but if you're really set on it, it can work in both of this weeks. But you do need to understand the amount of blank players, the amount of double players you've got, because it can impact who you're able to bring into your teams this week. So we're going to start off at Luton. Probably the surprise package recently in terms of performances are Luton. Of course, they got that big win against Brighton and then drew 4-4 with Newcastle at the weekend. They definitely look like a team that want to create chances, want to score goals, and are not scared of the opposition that they are playing at the moment. Now, looking at their fixtures, they have Sheffield United at home this week. Then they double in Game Week 25. Then the blank in Game Week 26. Aston Villa and then Crystal Palace away. Now, of course, looking at the likes of Liverpool, they may be a higher priority, but there are definitely some assets in here that are worth considering. Before we do that, this evening, before time recording, there is an FA Cup replay between Blackpool and Nottingham Forest. Now, you're probably thinking, that's not relevant to Luton, but it is. Luton playing Nottingham Forest in the Game Week 29 blank game week. If Nottingham Forest were to get knocked out tonight, that would give almost a certainty that Luton Nottingham Forest would go ahead in Game Week 29, as long as Luton lost away at Manchester City in the FA Cup, which you probably would expect them to. So if Forest go out tonight, it makes the Luton assets even more appealing than I think, to be honest, they already are. If you're going to buy Luton assets, I do think this is the week to do it. Buy them at home to Sheffield United, where I do think they'll win at home. They've looked good. I think they'll score goals. Now, there are a bunch of attackers and actually some defenders that you should be considering as well. So up front, they are playing a front 2 at the moment in Adebayo and Morris. Both of them are very cheap assets, both of them under that 5 million price mark, and I think you should be considering both. Now, Adebayo did go off after 88 minutes, but we are fully expecting him to be back available for the weekend. He is probably the one that I would pick. However, Morris is likely to be on penalties when he does start, so there is a sort of gamble. You can pick either of the 2 options. I would probably pick Adebayo over the 2, just so he feels slightly more nailed at the moment. Now, into midfield, Ross Barkley is a fantastic cheap option. A lot of people are looking at the likes of Garnacho, who got big points recently, and he is also a great option that we will talk about during this video. But Ross Barkley is showing some of the Premier League talent that we have seen from him in previous clubs. At Chelsea briefly, but mainly at Everton. And I do think if you're looking for a cheap midfielder, he can work as long as it doesn't give you too much of an issue in game week 26. Now, moving into defence, Mengi, 3.9 million, did miss a game through injury, but he is back and he looks like a solid option if you need a cheap defender going into the next couple of weeks. Unlikely to set the world alight, they don't keep a massive clean sheets, but if you need a cheap defender, he should definitely be on radar. Next up is Doughty. So attacking, playing at left wing back. On most set pieces, he's playing left wing at times, and when they score 3 or 4 goals, the chances are Doughty's going to get an attacking return. So if you need to downgrade a Trippier, a Pedro Porro, someone else in your defence to go and free up some money, Alfie Doughty should definitely be on radar. And the final one is Kaminsky. Now, you're probably thinking, let's not make goalkeeper transfers, but I am considering him for my team. I've got Areola, who's currently yellow flagged, and I've got Dubravka, who's not keeping many clean sheets at the moment. I could bring him in this week. He has a better fixture this week. He then doubles. Some nice fixtures on the horizon. It doesn't matter that he blanks because I've got other keepers that can play in game week 26. So I am considering Kaminsky. I am also considering Adebayo for my team. Chances of me going on more than one Luton asset seem quite low. But if it fits your team right, they definitely shouldn't just be ignored because you think they're Luton and you think Liverpool is more important. These guys could be the massive enablers that you need to afford the likes of Haaland, the likes of Salah if he's back, the likes of Kevin De Bruyne and Trent Alexander-Arnold as well. Next up is Brentford, probably the team with actually the least amount of options, and part of that is because their fixtures are pretty awful over the next few weeks, but they do double in game week 25. They're also guaranteed to play in the blank in game week 26 and are just one of 4 teams to be guaranteed to play in the blank in game week 29 as well. So if you are not free hitting in game week 29, buying a Brentford player is definitely not the end of the world and not the worst idea. Now, the fixtures are not great. They have Liverpool, Manchester City and double. They go away to Wolves this week, who've been very good, and they go away to West Ham in the blank in 26. But there are a couple of attacking options. Now, the defensive options, Flecken got a 10-pointer the other night against Manchester City with 3 save points, 2 bonus points and an assist. He is a good option, but we're not going to see that from him every week. If you need a goalkeeper and you're looking to buy this week, there are much worse goalkeepers to buy than Flecken. Yes, the clean sheets are not there, but he does rack up saves as we saw against Manchester City. In defence, there are 2 real options for me. Sergi Reguilon, who fit in so quickly in that Brentford team against Manchester City, is taking some set pieces as well at 4.4 million, playing at wing back, could be a really nice option. Ben Mee is the other one. He's slightly more nailed than Reguilon. He's slightly more expensive, but he does have more goal threat. We've seen him score goals at several times so far this season as well. So he is definitely one to be considered. But most of the options, the other 2 options for me are both up front, and that's Ivan Toney and Neil Mopai actually. So Toney is an obvious pick, right? He's on penalties, he's on direct free kicks, he has the fixtures, he is the talisman, he is a really nice option and one that I'm pretty sure I will own in my team very soon. Now, Neil Mopai is interesting. He's not hauling, but he is ticking along nicely. Of course, he got the goal against Manchester City, but he does love a yellow card, which is never ideal for an FPL asset. But 4.9 million, guaranteed to play in both blanks, and a double game week on the horizon isn't the end of the world either. The only caveat with him is when Visa returns from the African Cup of Nations, we aren't 100% sure whether Mopai will keep his place because he has been really good recently, or Visa will come back in. Ivan Toney is definitely the obvious and safe pick from Brentford. Next up is Liverpool, probably the team getting the most attention because their double game week has only been announced recently just before the Saturday deadline, and it was only added to the FPL website on Monday. So there are several options. The first one to cover is Salah. We currently don't have an estimated return date. We've seen him still training in the gym. It probably looks unlikely that he's going to be available to start at home to Burnley. But even if he's back in the squad for game week 25 for the double, which is very nice away at Brentford and Luton at home, it will have a knock-on effect for the likes of Darwin and Jota. Personally, I'm not sure Salah, if he's not going to get in the squad at all for game week 24, is going to be ready to start both in 25 before a cup final, given he's just had a hamstring injury. So personally, I don't think we'll be buying Salah unless we see him in the squad for 24, but it does have an impact on the other assets. Now, defensively, Alisson, if you can get to him, is probably the most nailed along with Van Dijk. Most of us are not spending 5.7 million on a goalkeeper though. Van Dijk, 6.3, is the most nailed defender that we have. Robertson and Gomez can both be in a left back. Konate suspended for Burnley, but then should play both in the double. And then we have the issue going on at right back with Trent. Connor Bradley, of course, had the tragic personal news that he's had to suffer over the past week, and that is why he missed out in the squad completely in game week 23. Trent did start, but Klopp has said that he's not fully fit, and that's why he didn't play the full game. Is he going to start Burnley, Brentford and Luton before a cup final when he's not fully fit? I'm not 100% sure. But if you own him, let's say he starts 2, that is absolutely fine. Trent can haul if he starts 2 of the next 3, and that's probably what I expect. With Dominic Szoboszlai also injured, there is a possibility that Trent plays in midfield as well. So if you own Trent, he's a definite hold. But if you don't own him, I don't think I would be buying him now, and I'd let him go and focus on other players. Now, the 2 real talking points this week are Jota and Darwin. For me, Darwin is the better pick, but there are a lot of forwards we're looking at the moment in the likes of Haaland, Watkins looking good, in the likes of Tony, who we've just spoken about as well. I do like Darwin the most, but Jota is also a good pick. If you've got injuries in your midfield, you're likely to move around your midfield. I do like Jota, but I personally think Jota is at most risk of getting reduced minutes the minute that Salah does come back into that Liverpool team. So if Salah's going to start one, be on the bench for another in the double, Darwin, he may well start both in the double. Jota, that means I'm not certain he is going to start both unless the prognosis on Salah is not as good as we thought. So personally, if you're looking to buy Liverpool, Darwin is the number 1 pick. Jota probably second. And if you need a defender, I'd buy Van Dijk over Trent at the moment. And finally, moving on to Manchester City. And the important thing about Manchester City, like Brentford, is they play in the blank in 26. So it's not too much of a worry investing heavily in them for them to have a blank after, because they have a nice fixture away at Bournemouth in game week 26. And the next 3 games are all at home. Everton, Chelsea, Brentford, all at home for Manchester City now. The top 3 assets, Haaland first, Foden second, De Bruyne third, is my ranking for the top 3. Haaland, I just would want him in. He's going to be massively captained and triple captained in game week 25. Foden is a cheap option. We see he can explode. He can be frustrating, but if they score a lot of goals, he is on great form at the moment. And De Bruyne is great, but a lot of us don't necessarily have an easy route to De Bruyne. I look at my team and think I have to sell Watkins, I have to sell Saka, or I have to sell Trent if I want to buy De Bruyne in my team for the next couple of game weeks, which I don't love at all, but I might have to make a decision on whether I do it or not. So there are a few other picks if you can't get to the Haaland, De Bruyne, Foden triple up that I would recommend. Most of that is defensively. To be honest, going forward, the one that's not actually on the graphic here is Julian Alvarez. Personally, I thought he looked a little bit lost midweek. When Haaland starts, which he looks like he's set to do, having played a lot of minutes on Monday night, he loses penalties. And with De Bruyne looking like he's going to get a lot of minutes, he loses all free kicks as well, which does really dent the appeal of Julian Alvarez. Now, he might start 1 in the double, which is that enough? If you still own him, maybe you hold him for the double and sell him after that. But I definitely would not be advising to buy Julian Alvarez if you don't own him now. The others are more defensive options. Now, Rodri is on here and you're all going to laugh and think, Harry, that's crazy. And it is pretty crazy. But he's started 18 games so far this season. He's got 9 attacking returns. When he scores goals, he almost guarantees at least 1 bonus point. He's probably the only player outside of maybe Edison that I am absolutely certain is going to start all of the next 3 or 4 games. 5.6, if you can't get to the attacker and you're looking for a bit of a differential, it's not the worst idea. It's not impossible that he gets 1 attacking return, he gets all the appearance points, and he mops up a 10-11 pointer in the double game week. I don't think I'm going to do it myself, but it's one worth considering if you don't have the money as a bit of a differential. Now, the other 2 are defensively, and there are so many defenders. Basically, every Man City defender is fit at the moment, so trying to pick who's going to start all of them is very difficult. Ruben Diaz is probably the most expensive, but he does look pretty nailed and he's playing well. Kyle Walker did miss out on that 1 game, but he is club captain, and I do think he has a very good chance of playing the next few games. The thing to mention as well is between game week 24 and 25, they have an away Champions League tie where I do expect a fully fit squad and a fully strength Manchester City in that one. Just so Pep, it is against Copenhagen where you would expect Manchester City to win comfortably, but the away leg being first means I do think Pep will just want to secure a result in that game, which does add an extra element of risk and rotation. But Walker is good. Ake at a slightly cheaper price also looks pretty nice as well. Would I personally take the risk on a Manchester City defender right now? I'm not necessarily sure I would, but if it fits your squad, you're looking for a defender. Let's say you've got Konza, who's likely out for a fair few weeks as well. Ake and Walker would be my top 2 players to buy. And the final four, just other single game week players that to consider, because not everyone just wants to pile in on double game week players, particularly if you've got enough blankers in game week 26. The first couple play for Wolves. As a Chelsea fan, it was a painful watch, but Wolves are very good. Pedro Neto looks like a really good buy and a very attacking option at the moment. And Aït-Nouri was practically playing left wing, if not left forward, against us at the weekend. Now, whether that maintains when Hwang Chan comes back, we aren't certain, but even then, he should stay in the Wolves lineup. Douglas Luiz, a cheap way into that Aston Villa attack. They scored 5 goals at the weekend. He only played half the match of football, got 1 assist for 5 goals, and still mopped up a bonus point as well. The fixtures are there, and if they lose in the FA Cup replay to Chelsea, they'd be guaranteed to play in both Game Week 26 and Game Week 29. So keep an eye on that fixture on Wednesday evening. And the final one, a cheaper alternative, if you need one, is Garnacho. Guaranteed to play in Game Week 26. Fulham at home. Manchester United's highest goal scorer across all competitions is just 4.8 million. The fixtures are there. He's very sort of up and down in terms of returns, but he's a good enabler if you need to afford the likes of Salah, Haaland, and then, of course, Kevin De Bruyne as well. So mainly covering double game week players for you here, but there are a few other single game week players that I do think you should consider if you're all in on double game week players like Liverpool, Brentford, Manchester City, and Luton already. Thank you all so much for watching. 1,000 likes on the video. Leave any questions you have, any comments about the double game weeks in the comment section down below. Like and subscribe before you go, and I'll be back again very soon.